Hi, it's Steve Hargadon, and this is the closing keynote of our inaugural Future of Museums Conference, part of a set of twin events hosted by LearningRevolution.com and the New Media Consortium. And of course, our closing keynote is Alex Freeman, Director of Special Projects for NMC. Alex, it's been a fun day. Thanks for closing us out.
Oh, thanks for having me, Steve. Yeah, so welcome everyone. My name is Alex.
No. Don't call yet.
All right.
Special thanks to NMC and to the Center for the Future of Museums. Both Alex and Elizabeth were co-chairs for this conference. The Learning Revolution brings together all of the conversations we hope that are taking place in different learning professions. Please come join us. 10 to 12 events a year, about 100,000 attendee logins. Lots of fun. And this is a great extension of what we're trying to do. For those of you who are in the live room, this is your chance to let us know where you're participating from. You're almost all going to know the drill at this point, but click on the star to the left of the map. It'll fold out to some other icons. You can click the star again, or you can click happy face. I'm going to do a happy face. Had a great day. Let us know in the chat where you're participating from, time and temperature. And again, Serbia or Slovenia, we're so glad that you made us international and cross-continental, multi-continental.
Awesome.
Alaska, typically you've had Canada today. And keep those locations coming in the chat, although I am going to move the slide forward. And Alex, the time is yours, and I'll help you whatever way you need.
All right, thanks, Steve. Like Steve said, this is the second of two great days of thinking about the future of museums. Yesterday we had a symposium where we had a number of keynotes and some panel discussions on some of the topics that I'm going to talk about today. So I'm closing this out by kind of coming full circle and talking about the Horizon Report and a little bit about the NMC. So in the chat, if you don't mind, let me know if you've read the Horizon Report or even know what it is, just so I can get a sense of the room. You know, if you've heard of the NMC, usually people know of the NMC, but not the Horizon Report. So just give me a have not read. Okay, good. Getting a feel for the room. This is one of the important projects that we do at the NMC, and as Steve had mentioned, I'm the director of special projects, so I'm just kind of the special guy. I'm the museum guy on staff, and I do a lot of presentations on the Horizon Report. I'm one of the lead researchers and writers for the reports in all of the sectors, and when I do presentations, we tweet, and when we do, we use this hashtag NMCHZ. We're also using the hashtag Museum14 if you want to go ahead and if you do tweet. We have a pretty large community. I know that Steve does too, virtually, so your voice will be heard in that way. So let me. Oh, perfect. So let me bring you to the topic of this presentation is really highlighting parts of the Horizon Report for museums. And I know it's 2013 and we're in 2014, but this was published late in December. So still very pertinent information within this report. And we'll be gearing up pretty soon to produce our next report, our fifth report in the series. My Twitter handle is, here, I'll put it in here. At D_Lubbock, and that is that's a long story on how I got that name. Okay, so the Horizon Report. Since some of you aren't familiar with the NMC, I'll just give you a brief kind of history of who we are. What is the NMC? Well, the NMC, we're 21 years old right now. So if we were a person, we'd be able to walk into a bar and drink. But we started late this month, July 31st, 1992 at the Hakone Forum at the base of Mount Fuji. At that time, John Scully from Apple and James Burke led a group of over 100 information technologists to discuss this idea of what is new media. And I think it's so funny that we're almost 22 years later and it's still new media. So I think that's really funny. But at the time, this new media idea was, you know, QuickTime had just come out. You had Adobe was present there. They were developing their Photoshop, and it's like, what is this thing? And so one of the things that they were interested in doing at this summit was to come up with a number of initiatives to help define this new media, and they felt that it was important to connect with higher education. So we started out mostly with higher ed as our background. So back in after that forum, we had 22 universities that had sometimes just a room in their university where they investigated new media. Fast forward 10 years, and Larry Johnson becomes our CEO. It changes from the New Media Centers to the New Media Consortium and the birth of the Horizon Project that looks at emerging technology initiatives for teaching, learning, creative inquiry, and research. So that's the focus of our reports. We started out with the higher ed report. We moved into K-12, and we've been doing the Horizon report for a number of years now. I've got to thank our sponsors for helping us produce the report, which we worked with the Marcus Institute for Digital Education and the Arts. They've now disbanded, so we've kind of absorbed the museum part of what we do as a museum initiative. And that's where I go from the director of Medea to the director of special projects. And for me, my background is in museums, so I started out as an education curator and then worked as the education director, and was really interested in taking videos of artists and, you know, using iPads and starting to develop these kind of tools that coming to the NMC has been a really great thing. And now I get to report on really great things that are happening in the world of museum technology, and that's going to be the focus of our report today. Here's a quick kind of view of the Horizon project. We have over the course of the 12 years, we've done 38 editions, 12 reports, and it's been translated 50 or more times, more than 50 times, excuse me. This year we did our first European report for European universities. It's going to be released very soon, and all 28 languages of the European Union. And so we have done work in 60 countries over the years. So it gives you a sense of our global impact. We do, like I mentioned before, we do higher ed reports. We do K-12, museums, European Union, Latin America, and we do smaller regional and sector technology outlooks. And to give you a sense of, this is the past 1,000 downloads, kind of all over the map, even up here in this, I was able to highlight it, in Canada, up in the Yukon, all the way up there. And so we're poised to do some more work in Africa, working with UNESCO here this coming year. So cool stuff, good global outreach. So let's start with the birth of the report. So what I've got here is the wiki. It's kind of old-fashioned, but it works for what we do. What we do is we gather, it's a modified Delphi model, which means we get a bunch of experts together, they have a discussion, and they vote on things. And so we do this within the wiki. So you can go to the museum.wiki.nmc.org if you'd like, and you'll get to see how a report is produced. Basically, we bring 50 of these experts together. We review press clippings. We have a researcher on staff, Michelle Cummins, who's awesome, and what she does is she scans the environment for the most pertinent educational technology topics across the different disciplines, and then puts it into, we have an app called the HZ News app, and then some of the most important articles per sector are placed in this wiki, and then people are invited to read the reports, read the articles, and then put their name and kind of their comments on how the technologies are unfolding. So That's a good place to get a heat map and to see, where's the interest, where is the momentum going, what are some of the topics that we might, be able to delve into deeper. Then we start taking a look at some trends that we see. So we list out some trends that we start. Sometimes we bring them from the previous year. And then we invite the panel of experts to add additional trends. What are we seeing happening within museums? After that, we have a series of challenges. What kind of challenges are impeding progress in museums? And then we have an opportunity to add to that. Then we have a first round of voting, which is everyone's given a number of votes. They go into the tech topics and they say, okay, I believe crowdsourcing is really hot right now, so it's in the near-term horizon. I believe that 3D printing is going to be 2 to 3 or 4 to 5 years from now. So once we get that series of voting, we get a short list. I'm going to talk about the short list in a little bit, but then we have a second round of voting that we call the survivor round, which basically means we vote 2 of the topics off the island. And so that gives us six topics, tech topics over 3 adoption horizons. It's the near term, 1 to 2 years, or 1 year or less. We have 2 to 3 years, and we have 4 to 5 years. So that gives us a sense of how that works. We also have our significant trends and challenges, and they're voted in terms of, they're ranked in terms of importance. So I'm going to jump right into the report and talk about some of the key trends that we see. So here we got a great picture about sharing resources. So really this is ideas of funding structures are beginning to change within museums, and it's encouraging more collaboration between museums. And sometimes it's more of a passive way of collaborating. Working on a library report right now and looking at ideas such as linked open data. There's a group called LODLAM, Linked Open Data for Libraries, Archives, and Museums. And what they're trying to do is connect some of the data, the metadata within a museum's collection to other museums and make it searchable so that people can access and know what's in a museum's collection. So you're seeing some of that with the Google Art Project as well. Museums are signing up and saying, hey, let's find ways of getting our collections out there to larger communities. So this was voted as the top trend, and I think primarily because of the funding part. We're having to think of different ways in order to collaborate and share resources. Next is about rich media. This is kind of why I got into working at the NMC to begin with, was thinking about video, audio, animations. These are no longer seen as afterthoughts, but are increasingly necessary components of an interpretive plan. They're making it into audio guides, into apps, into electronic publications. This is something that is a trend that we're seeing a lot of movement in. Next, this is a really cool kind of machine. It's digitizing books. And so this whole idea of visitors are expecting to access accurate and interesting information with high quality media, and this requires museums to plan accordingly, to budget for digitization and to properly catalog their collections. Next is that social engagement part. We're moving from passive to active engagement within museums. So things like social media, open content, crowdsourcing. These are providing museum patrons with more immersive opportunities to become part of the content or to engage in the content in a new way. Next is all these devices. I have about 3 of these probably sitting within, I can grab them on my iPad, all these things. So increasingly, we're bringing these devices, or we're accessing museum websites through these devices. So visitors are expecting to be able to access something, via mobile device. So prioritizing for mobiles. A museum that has a flash website is probably not. I'm probably not going to stay engaged with that museum for very long if I'm on my mobile. And you know what? I have a lot more time on my mobile than I probably do at my desktop. So this is a interesting trend, and we're seeing some movement within here. You know, there's ideas of native apps that are things that are, okay, this is for iOS, this is for Android, but what I've seen kind of changing over the past couple of years that I've been with the NMC is this idea that maybe responsive web design is a way to go with this. Maybe it's instead of a device, something that's more device agnostic, and you're seeing a lot of movement in that area. But the apps are still a big thing, or these mobile versions of websites. These are different ways that our museums are approaching this trend. This is my wife. She's not my wife, but it's a good depiction of her. She works at a job where she doesn't get a lot of screen time, so I'll always catch her brushing her teeth on her phone, always on her phone, So it's really funny for me to think about this because it's so true. Mobile access to information is changing how we plan things. We really expect to get information, addresses, directions, reviews, answers. Got to ask the magic phone what we say to hey, what's the capital of Belgium? Oh, that's the magic phone. Or who was in this movie? So things are happening in that way too. People are expecting to access mobile information and are doing it regardless if you provide interpretive material or not. People may look up Wikipedia. They may be in your museum and look up an artwork or a artifact and learn more about it. So we're seeing this trend of people being connected all the time. And then last is this idea of data literacy. 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years. That's an incredible figure, and this is one of our keynoters yesterday pointed this out too, Jasper Visser. Through the exponential growth of hardware and software and networking, every day we add 2.5 quintillion bytes. That's a lot of information, so it's really important that museums start understanding this big data and this idea of viewers and visitors and participants being able to interpret this type of data. Right now we talk about reading literacy, information literacy. Well, if we don't know how to interpret data over the next 5 to 10, 20 years, decisions may be made without us knowing what that means. So data literacy is a really big trend, and museums are right on top of it. Next, we're going to significant challenges, and any cat lovers out there in the crowd, I always try to have at least one cat slide in my presentation to appeal to the cat lovers out there. So, and so this is funny because this is a big challenge. It's this idea that you have visitors that come to your museum, and Ed Rodley yesterday in his crowdsourcing panel was talking about, he started museums 30 years ago. And the idea there that when he came into the museum world was, once a person walked into a museum, you started educating them and showing them the content and engaging with them, and then they left. And that was done. Cleaned your hands. An exhibition was a very static thing. It was something that had a beginning and an end. Now we're seeing this blending of virtual and physical visitors within the space, and so these are blurring rapidly. I'm engaging with museums that I like a lot, like the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam or the Tate Museum in the UK. Excuse me. Those are great organizations. I've never been to Europe. I probably won't be able to get there very soon, but I can engage with their programming, and I am an audience member, even though I won't be there. So that's a challenge that museums are having to focus on. Is like, we're just going to ignore. You can't just ignore this virtual world. The societal trends are moving to this way. The other part here is I like this. These are silos, of course. I see a lot of silos in museums, and there used to be the tech guy in the museum that you'd call and he'd help you, put your software in or help you set up your phone lines. And now everybody is affected by technology within a museum. You're having to think about, e-forms of marketing, philanthropy, preservation, the curatorial side, the marketing. All these departments are having to deal with some kind of technology. So the challenge is being able to get everyone up to speed and to understand whose job it is to do what. Number 3, digital strategy. Nick Honeysett did a great job talking about digital strategy yesterday, and the idea of creating a digital strategy for a generation. And the idea is to focus less on that technology and more on societal trends and what kind of impact. So the idea, what's happening now, we have a trend towards mobility, we have a trend towards participation, we have a trend towards personalization. These are all things that we can plan for in a digital strategy, and it's more than a 3 to 5 year digital strategy. It's something long term. And he used a great example of, if I was in 2007 and I framed my entire digital strategy around MySpace, well, that probably wasn't the best way to approach social media. So it's this idea of being flexible enough to work in these different environments. Yeah, bye-bye MySpace. I think I still have a profile that has me locked in time in 2009. Next is, in many cases, museums don't have the necessary technical infrastructure. It's like this plug that you use, that you plug all these things into, and you just don't have the capacity. With this one, we have 17,000 self-identified museums, and many have very few staff and fewer resources. Digital is important, but we need ways of allocating funds. So, that's no surprise, big challenge. Another big challenge here is we have 50 million Americans with disabilities, and museums need to continue to improve accessibility to the facilities, to exhibitions, programs. So we're seeing technology help in this way, but it's something that needs to be focused on a little bit more. Next is all of these assets, right? So an education department is developing interpretive text. Curators are writing scholarly text. We have conservators creating files and special photographs, and they live all in these different places. And we need to find a way of managing and deploying these assets in a good way. So let's see, we have, so next we're going to go to the technologies to watch. So I explained that we had 6 technologies. What's happening now? BYOD, bring your own device. Next is crowdsourcing. And then things that we see kind of, when we say 1 year less, these adoption horizons, they refer to mainstream adoption. And so mainstream adoption is within 50% of museums. So, that gives us a sense of how many museums are using that. So not every museum, but mainstream. So 2 to 3 years are location-based services. That's kind of like indoor GPS. Electronic publishing is continuing to gain momentum. And then way down the road, 4 to 5 years, is natural user interfaces and preservation and conservation technologies. I'm going to show you one quick slide, and this is kind of places, this is our short list right here. So the vertical trend in the middle, 2 of these got voted off, so you can see which ones did. So BYOD and crowdsourcing, we have open content and social media. Next we have 3D printing, augmented reality, and the 2 I spoke of. Then we have Internet of Things and wearable technology. But the interesting thing about this is if you look at the vertical columns to the right and left, we have our K-12 edition from 2013 and our higher ed edition. And you start looking across and seeing trends, right? So BYOD in schools and museums. You see this idea of tablets and mobile apps. So, we're seeing mobile learning in K-12, seeing a lot of activity within mobile right now. Next, you see 2 to 3 years, some of the things that we're seeing within higher ed and K-12 are learning analytics. But museums are a little bit different. We don't teach formal education classes for the most part, and that's online learning is a different space. But most of it is informal learning. So learning analytics, big data is being used in different ways. And I think Elizabeth Merritt this morning talked about the Dallas Museum of Art and their Friends program is using big data in order to understand and educate. And then further down the line, we see 3D printing happening in K-12 and higher ed, but we see it a little earlier in museums because we're seeing a lot of experimentation, and it's just a natural fit because we're talking about objects. So, and then further down the road, this last line, wearable technology across the row there. So wearables are really big. Watching the Consumer Electronics Show in January this year, everything was wearable, and people are making everything wearable and just trying to see what sticks. That's my interpretation of that. Is like not every one of those products are going to take off, but a lot of what happens in the consumer technology is, has applications to education. So we definitely look at these type of things and seeing what are the applications. So I just want to show you that quick slide. I'm going to go into talking about the actual technologies that made our list, and I'm going to show you some awesome examples that we talk about, some great highlights, if you will, from our report. Okay, so BYOD, this idea of bringing your own device. We love our devices. I love mine. Museums are starting to respond to that. Okay, so museums are this idea of mobile websites, of creating apps, of having free Wi-Fi. Somebody used the idea yesterday that it's like having a bathroom in a museum. It's like it's not like, oh well, we offer a bathroom. No, it's expected. If you want to come up and fill up your water bottle or something like that, that's kind of what the Wi-Fi is. And so when you have Wi-Fi available, and it's there's infrastructure issues with some buildings, but with Wi-Fi you're able to do a lot more inside of the museum. And some cool things too. So what we have here on the top left is the Museum of Contemporary Art in Australia, and this kind of relates to that idea of the virtual and physical visitor. They're on Instagram, and they encourage their staff to actively take pictures and share it on Instagram. And they have large displays within the museum where you can see the audience taking pictures. You're seeing the staff take pictures, and then you're able to share that across a virtual community. I think that's a really great idea, and what you're seeing a lot of now is museums starting to say, like, relax their photography policy. So a lot of museums, like, no photography in this space, and now they're like, no flash photography, no tripods, because people, how can you tell when people are taking pictures these days? And what you'll see is when people are wearing contact lenses or Google Glass, I mean, how are you going to regulate that? So museums are starting to change and be more open towards bring your own device concepts, and actually using it to their advantage. Here we have the National Museum of Scotland on the bottom right, called Capture the Museum, where they actually had people on their phones go, and they have objects that the blue team and a red team kind of gamified engagement with the collections. And so that wouldn't be possible without Wi-Fi and really understanding that people have bringing their own devices. There's still things like audio tours that are still important, because museums don't want to have to worry about developing apps. And you're seeing those types of tours become more sophisticated to compete against the bring your own device movement. All right, so I'm going to show you a quick video. I'm going to try this here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load this, and I'm going to share this link in case you can't see it. So
if the video doesn't play for you automatically, those of you in the audience, click on the link in the chat.
So I think this is a good example of why I like the Tate so much, is because they are making content available for me even if I don't go to the Tate. The other thing that's important about BYOD for teaching and learning is that, well, once you access information or download an app or access, whatever the museum has, when I leave the museum, I can still engage with it. And I think that's a powerful thing about mobile devices and bring your own devices. If I check out an audio guide, then I have to check it back in, and then I'll have to wait till the next time before I can engage with those things. So really like the Tate. For Peggy, no, this works inside and outside the museum. So there are components of that app that allow you to engage outside as well. So, that's why it's important to have your collections digitized and find ways of having content that you can find different ways of deploying. It's kind of another form of electronic publishing if you think about it. Next is crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing is, as I learned yesterday, is kind of a bad word because I think a lot of museums are starting to think about engagement and participation, and crowdsourcing has this notion that it's you're getting something from people, like they're helping you do a job, and really we should think about how we're engaging in the reciprocity with it. I think here's a couple examples from the report. One is Describe Me, and this is Museum of Victoria's collections, and this is kind of addressing another of those challenges of the blind and low vision community. This is crowdsourcing, having people help by picking an image from the collection, looking carefully and describing it in their own way, so that somebody that has a hard time viewing it is getting some information about that with the help of others. Next, we do have the fundraising part, and it's not just fundraising. That's correct. But it's becoming important. In 2012, Kickstarter, money from Kickstarter for art projects overcame that which was offered for the National Endowment for the Arts. There's more money raised through Kickstarter than was distributed through the National Endowment of Arts for art projects. So we're seeing that become something really big. And crowdfunding is not new. A lot of museums kind of have crowdfunded to a very limited number of collectors or trustees to put in an exhibition. But what's different is you're engaging a lot more people for smaller amounts. And we're seeing this happen within collections, helping to describe collections, citizen science, even the Art Prize in Grand Rapids, Michigan. That's an opportunity to help select which artists are going to be in an exhibition, or just user-generated content, actually, exhibitions of stuff that people are submitting. Let's see. Our next slide is, this is really cool. This is, we're actually seeing museums become created within with crowdsourcing, crowdfunding methods, and this is an interesting one from the Museum of Food and Drink.
So on this one, I have to click play.
Okay, I'll just give a minute or so, a couple seconds to let everyone finish up. Okay, so I see a lot of people in the audience are really, excited about this new museum. Like, how do I fund this? And we're going to see a lot more of that as traditional funding models start changing. It's really an interesting thing to think about, but it's definitely appealing to people that food. It's food. Everyone is interested in that. Last thing about crowdsourcing is the idea that Rob Stein from the Dallas Museum of Art said in one of his presentations, that in order to make this successful, museums need to be more authoritative and less authoritarian. So you have to be able to relax the authority in order to truly have a good crowdsourced thing. Okay. Next, we have something a little bit further down the road, the 2 to 3 year horizons. Electronic publishing. This is becoming a really big thing, and one of the things that's helped stimulate this in this trajectory is that we have in 2008 we had the OSCE project, which is the Online Scholarly Catalog Initiative, where 9 museums took this platform, this OSCE toolkit, got an IMLS grant to have scholars work in it and develop publications. And now we're in the implementation phase where we're actually able to see some of these projects. So at the SF MoMA, they decided to have a mobile site, a responsive website that serves as a publication that is able to bring in videos of the artists and conservation images, really great rich media stuff. And at the Oakland Museum of California, a lot of museums have their magazine, so they've gone completely digital with their magazine. And so with electronic publishing, we see the traditional model for scholarly publishing is a curator says, hey, I got a great idea, I want to do a catalog on this artist from our collection, and the executive director is like, that's great. Now go raise some money for it. And so now it's maybe they'll go out crowdsourcing to get that money, but it's an expensive and it's a time-consuming process. And once you have a publication, there's no way of you can have a new edition come out, but within these, if some new scholarship arises, you're able to change these electronic publications very quickly. It also kind of helps to break down the silos, because you're having to get things from the educators. It's addressing that challenge, right, of all these digital assets are everywhere. It's bringing in your curator, your educator, your conservator, because they're working together on this project, and this gives us a place to get that out there. And you can also take scholarly things and twist it and to make it more of a popular consumable thing. The other thing about digital publications, electronic publications, are the tablets that you use. You're able to they're more accessible, right? So you can have the transcripts read to you if you can't see it, or if you have low vision, you can make the letters bigger. You can increase the brightness. There's other ways that you can use that can't be seen in a normal book. And so my next example is really to take you to the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. They're the ones that helped organize the OSCE project. And I couldn't say it any better than Anne Helmreich from the Getty about the project that they're working on and the benefits of electronic publishing. So let me go ahead and get her started. And I'm gonna stop there for the sake of time, but you get the sense of what's going on with these electronic publications. It's one way of bringing all of these types of assets together. Next is on the 2 to 3 year spectrum is location-based services, and we dived into this yesterday with some of the people that are actually using this in their museum. So what we see here is the Byte Light, and the Museum of Science Boston is using this. And basically what they're doing is LED lights, they flicker on a 1010 pattern that is imperceptible to us. And what this Byte Light is it's retrofitting lights within the ceiling of a museum so that the camera on your phone or your device is able to pick up these. It'll go 111, 00, 111, 00 in order to direct you around the space. So it's this idea of indoor GPS. It's an area that we're challenged with because some of our museums are huge. You know, trying to get to the one place you want to get to, you know, you get the map, but it's just easier to get pushed into those directions. So right now, Wi-Fi triangulation is being used widely, but it's expensive and it's not as accurate as some of these other methods. I think 30 foot radius is what you have to work with Wi-Fi triangulation. So we're looking at different things, different ways of addressing this challenge. On the right here, you see this is from the Timken Museum, and this is active RFID. So what they do is they put little sensors by paintings, and once you have the app, you walk by it, it understands where you are and it pushes things to you. That's where we are right now with location-based services, but we see within the consumer sector a lot of work on personalizing things. So, you know, if you happen to an idea called geofencing is emerging, and this idea is that if you're outside, if I'm here in my office and I want to go to the Blanton, which is down in by the campus, by UT Austin campus, you know, the mobile site might recognize me as being far away and give me directions on how to get there. But once I'm inside the museum, do I really need to get directions to the museum? Is that the most pertinent information if I go to the website? It might say, hey, these are the galleries that you need to view. And then the other idea is collecting this information so that if you spend a lot of time in a certain gallery, as you're leaving, it might say, hey, we have a special on some catalog for this gallery that you were in. So this idea of personalization is really emerging with location-based services. Let's see, and so one of the biggest uses of this is with these apps, and at the Cleveland Museum of Art, they have this project called the Art Lens. I'm going to show you real quick. I'm going to stop it there for the sake of time, but you can see how the practical applications of that is being able to get around inside of a space. Next is our last adoption horizon, our 4 to 5 years, and on that we have natural user interfaces. So what's in that? NUIs is the other kind of acronym we use for that. NUIs. We often use that if we have a smartphone or if we have a tablet. It's the idea of gesture-based computing, of using your finger to point and to zoom and to flick. And what you see on the top right there is Gallery 1 at the Cleveland Museum of Art. So what you have is this collection wall. So you have all these objects that people are able to engage with just by touching and swiping as if they were, you know, touching a wall or a table. The other thing that was interesting is on the left here we have at the New Mexico Museum of Fine Art. They have a series of marionettes that they had in a collection. They're very delicate, and so what they're doing is they're taking 3D scans, taking a series of photos, and creating a 3D model of those objects, and then excuse me, and then using the Microsoft Kinect, which is basically a video game, hacking into it and making it so that you're able to become the marionette yourself. So what you do is you sync with the asset that they've created through pictures, and you're able to engage with that object with using natural gestures. Here's a really cool video of how this might be, how museums, this is a science museum, how they're using it to engage with some birds, and it's a really cool bird dance. There's no audio here, and you're going to have to click on this link. So go ahead and click that, and you'll be able to see, and I'll provide some narration over it. So what you see is a Microsoft Kinect that's being set up, and it's the different mating calls of this certain bird. So what you'll see is this person is trying to engage with this item, this bird that they talk about in the museum through gestures. So it's an interesting way of getting people to engage with museum content. Okay, and well, before I leave that, for natural user interfaces, I think one of the interesting things to think about with that is this idea of that, where is it going? It's basically this idea of, the mouse and keyboard that we use right now is probably not going to be, we're probably not going to use that in the future. It'll be voice commands. It'll be eye commands. You think about that movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, where he has his hands against the wall and he's pointing to things. I mean, that's going to happen, and that's where natural user interfaces are going, and that's what museums are thinking about. This idea, the touch screens that we are seeing right now is the leading edge, and it's moving more towards natural gestures. The interesting thing is electrovibration, which is this idea of it's static electricity within a mobile device screen. So if you run your finger across it, it vibrates at such a level that it makes it feel like you're touching brick, or you're touching something that's like a sandpaper. It gives you the sense of what a material might feel like by a series of frequencies. So that's some crazy stuff right there. Real quick, here's a video of a natural user interface that has some possibilities. This is really inspirational and isn't in a museum, but it gives you a sense of the power of this type of technology. I just think this is really cool. Someone played just a minute of. We want to look and click play on this. So go ahead and click on play, and I'll just do about 30 seconds of this. But you'll get a sense of how this natural user interface is, what some possibilities are. Okay, go back to the presentation. That was pretty crazy if you had a chance to check out that video. kind of the possibilities of connecting physical and virtual things together. Very cool. All right, so we're on our last technology, and this isn't new. There are new things within this technology, but this preservation and conservation technologies really reflect the investment that museums currently have within in collections, their investment in their artworks. And it's really important because we are increasingly working with materials that were developed at a time where, in the 60s and 70s, artists were experimenting with different materials, and now they're beginning to disintegrate, or even some materials created not too long ago are beginning to disintegrate. I'm thinking of the shark tank. I forgot the artist's name, but he had a shark inside of a tank, and it's starting to deteriorate. That was his that artwork. So museums are very concerned about, are becoming increasingly concerned about how to preserve their objects. Damien Hirst, thank you. So there's a couple different things to that. There's time-based and there's time-based media conservation, which deals with things like video, things with formats that become obsolete. Nam June Paik was an artist that used cathode ray tube televisions to display his work. And what happens when you can't replace the tube? How do you show an artist's intent? So that's really important within the museum. And up here on the top left is the Reina Sofia Museum and their Pablito, which is a robot that takes scans of the objects to look at the condition of that object. And I'm just going to close with one last video. And this is while I was writing this section of the report, the MacArthur Fellows were announced, and Carl Haber won an award. He was an audio preservationist, and I want to show you just kind of the impact of this type of work and how technology is helping us. Let's see. Open URL in browser. Oops. This one is going to be a click one too. So if you want to go ahead and get to that site and click that video. Okay, so my time is up, but the point of that video is that we're using high resolution cameras to be able to create algorithms to tell us what a groove recording might sound like. I think that's a fascinating idea, and it's actually unlocking history with that. So with that, I'm going to end with, if you want to download the report, you can go to go.nmc.org, museums. To comment, we use the NMCHZ. We have a Facebook page set up for that. And if you feel like you would be a good person to be on the board, the advisory board, our panel of experts, you can nominate yourself at go.nmc.org, Horizon-nominate. If you have any questions about what you saw or heard today, shoot me an email at alex@nmc.org. And with that, I want to thank you and turn it back to Steve.
Alex, this is the close. I feel like you and I should be patting each other on the back. I think this is a terrific 2 days. Thanks to you for this session. It's hard to find the applause button, but I'm going to the smiley face and you click down, and there is an applause button still there. It's just not as visible as it once was. Congratulations. Great job.
So yeah, so
hey, thanks everybody.
The museum of
this is the close of our... Go ahead.
Oh, just a quick quote. The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. That's a quote by William Gibson, so keep that in mind.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for a wonderful inaugural event, 2 days, the symposium and then the conference. Have a great rest of your day and summer, and stay tuned for more. Take care. Bye now.
Bye. In the chat, if you don't mind, let me know if you've read the Horizon Report or even know what it is, just so I can get a sense of the room. You know, if you've heard of the NMC, usually people know of the NMC, but not the Horizon Report. So just give me a. Have not read. Okay, good. Getting a feel for the room. This is one of the important projects that we do at the NMC, and as Steve had mentioned, I'm the director of special projects, so I'm just kind of the special guy. I'm the museum guy on staff, and I do a lot of presentations on the Horizon Report. I'm one of the lead researchers and writers for the reports in all of the sectors. And when I do presentations, we tweet. And when we do, we use this hashtag NMCHZ. We're also using the hashtag Museum14 if you want to go ahead and if you do tweet. We have a pretty large community. I know that Steve does too, virtually, so your voice will be heard in that way. So let me, perfect. So let me bring you to the topic of this presentation, is really highlighting parts of the
map. It'll fold out to some other icons. You can click the star again, or you can click happy face. I'm going to do a happy face. Had a great day. Let us know in the chat where you're participating from, time and temperature. And again, Serbia or Slovenia, we're so glad that you made us international and cross-continental, multi-continental.
Awesome.
Alaska, typically you've had Canada today. And keep those locations coming in the chat, although I am going to move the slide forward. And Alex, the time is yours, and I'll help you whatever way you need.
All right, thanks, Steve. Like Steve said, this is the second of 2 great days of thinking about the future of museums. Yesterday we had a symposium where we had a number of keynotes and some panel discussions on some of the topics that I'm going to talk about today. So I'm closing this out by kind of coming full circle and talking about the Horizon Report and a little bit about the NMC. So that's really funny, but at the time, this new media idea was, you know, QuickTime had just come out. You had Adobe was present there. They were developing their Photoshop, and it's like, what is this thing? And so one of the things that they were interested in doing at this summit was to come up with a number of initiatives to help define this new media, and they felt that it was important to connect with higher education. So we started out mostly with higher ed as our background. So back in after that forum, we had 22 universities that had sometimes just a room in their university where they investigated new media. Fast forward 10 years, and Larry Johnson becomes our CEO. It changes from the New Media Centers to the New Media Consortium and the birth of the Horizon Project that looks at emerging technology initiatives for teaching, learning, creative inquiry, and research. So that's the focus of our reports. We started out with the higher ed report. We moved into K-12, and we've been doing the Horizon report for a number of years now. I've got to thank our sponsors for helping us produce the report, which we worked with the Marcus Institute for Digital Education.
Hi, it's Steve Hagedorn, and this is the closing keynote of our inaugural Future of Museums Conference, part of a set of twin events hosted by LearningRevolution.com and the New Media Consortium. And of course, our closing keynote is Alex Freeman, Director of Special Projects for NMC. Alex, it's been a fun day. Thanks for closing us out.
Oh, thanks for having me, Steve. Yeah, so welcome everyone. My name is Alex.
No. Don't call yet.
All right.
Special thanks to NMC and to the Center for the Future of Museums. Both Alex and Elizabeth were co-chairs for this conference. The Learning Revolution brings together all of the conversations we hope that are taking place in different learning professions. Please come join us, 10 to 12 events a year, about 100,000 attendee logins. Lots of fun. And this is a great extension of what we're trying to do. For those of you who are in the live room, this is your chance to let us know where you're participating from. You're almost all going to know the drill at this point, but click on the star to the left.
Horizon report for museums. And I know it's 2013 and we're in 2014, but this was published late in December. So still very pertinent information within this report. And we'll be gearing up pretty soon to produce our next report, our 5th report in the series. My Twitter handle is, here, I'll put it in here, at @D_Lubbock, and that is that's a long story on how I got that name. Okay, so the Horizon report. Since some of you aren't familiar with the NMC, I'll just give you a brief kind of history of who we are. What is the NMC? Well, the NMC, we're 21 years old right now. So if we were a person, we'd be able to walk into a bar and drink. But we started late this month, July 31st, 1992, at the Hakone Forum at the base of Mount Fuji. At that time, John Scully from Apple and James Burke led a group of over 100 information technologists to discuss this idea of what is new media. And I think it's so funny that we're almost 22 years later and it's still new media. So